Strap yourself in for another riveting episode of Build Series Sydney. My name is Danny Clayton, and joining us now is a man that has gone from Summer Bay to the mean streets of King's Cross. But before we introduce him, let's take a quick peek of his latest work.
Welcome to Sydney's best kept secret. Les Norton, High Scalesi.
Part of the team now. Call me boss. Keep your head screwed on quick, smart. Wrong side's lurking out there.
There's got to be a massive misunderstanding.
Bloody oath there has.
If you think you can just waltz in and stake a claim, you're out of your mind.
Thanks, Grandad. Time for your afternoon nap.
You like hurting blokes, do you, Les Norton?
Not especially.
Could have fooled me.
Make him feel welcome, Alex Bertrand.
G'day.
God, intimidating character you seem to be portraying there. Is he anything like the real Alexander Bertrand? Is Les and
There's similarities, but not with the intimidating sense. It's more like he's he's a bit of a softie.
Yeah, bit of a larrikin.
Yeah,
it seems.
A little bit of a larrikin, it seems. But he's no, I mean the character, like obviously in the books, is so different to the character that's created for the series. It's the same guy, but I mean you've got books that were written in 1984, and the vernacular, vocabulary, everything in them you could not have anywhere near screen today.
Yeah,
or be
of course.
acceptable. So it's like, so what Morgan's done, this guy that he's created here, he's a little bit more neutral. All the other satellite characters bring in this un-PC thing, and it's,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, but watching that, I couldn't stop myself giggling there. What's it like for you to watch that trailer?
Oh, look, it's it's still a spin out for me. I mean, I don't, I wasn't always from the acting background, if that makes sense. So it's like, so when you see something like that with Wenham, Rebel Wilson, and then your name popping up on something, you kind of, I remember I was with my mate and we're just driving, and the trailer just dropped, and it was like a Sunday night. We just left Manly from dinner. We're both just sitting there, and then suddenly it was just like this moment of like, he's like, dude, this thing's up, and I just kind of watched it, and I was like, oh my god. Right. Okay. So that's just happened, and it was like, I started when I was 18, 19. Went over to Thailand, started as a kickboxer. So that was my little journey there. I was there for a year, fought for the light heavyweight belt. Met the youngest guy ever to make the special forces. We came back. I would have been 20, and started training for the army. And that was the whole thing. So I put in a year and a half of training. Then you end up actually getting accepted, and you go. First 6 months in, snap my right kneecap, blow the cartilage out, and then it's almost a year in hospital, learning to walk again with guys missing their legs and their arms, eyes, down at Holsworthy there. So it was a bit of an eye opener and a bit of a spin out. And I always wanted to do acting, but it was something I never kind of thought was possible. If that makes sense. It's not something you just think, oh, like okay, yeah, you can. So I looked at it military-wise, and I was like, how would I approach acting? I started looking up schools, and a buddy of mine who you guys had on here, Luke Bracey, he gave me some good advice, on a couple of different schools to look at, and Screen-wise was a good one. So auditioned, and a couple of 3 rounds of auditions later, you're accepted in. I went straight from 4 months of leaving the military into this acting diploma, which was like alien to me, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you go straight from that world into this other environment, and we did 2 years there, and I finished October 2015, and then it was just this slow grind from there to here. So that was an absolute spin out.
Yeah, and now a career highlight, you're on the set of Build. Well,
that's it. Here we are.
Fantastic. 'Cause I know this probably means a lot to you. So that's such a trip out when we do look at the things you've accomplished in your life. Besides acting, kickboxing for one, that's a long time to spend in the jungle kickboxing.
Yeah.
Do you think that these things have contributed to the way that you act and given you an edge in the roles that you can now get?
Yeah, I would say for sure. I mean, it's funny because you go to acting school and you're taught different methods and different modes, and there's all these old books and you know, supposedly do this and do that. And the way I saw it the whole time before I got there was it's like life experience. You know, you can carry life experience, you know, and I'm not saying that as an actor you need to go, you know, go do the craziest stuff you've ever done in your life, you know. I almost got killed by an elephant in Thailand when I first got there, and, you know, fighting for belts in the army and whatever else. But I mean, you know, you find the great actors will go in bed with, you know, people who, you know, whatever they're researching. For instance, Tom Hardy, Edgerton, they went and did 4 months jiu-jitsu, MMA fighting when they did Warrior. You know, you look at Daniel Day-Lewis, you know, when he was doing the My Left Foot, you know, he embedded with a whole bunch of people, you know, who are actually suffering the same. And, you know, you got to learn basically the life experience of what it's like to be that person before you can kind of truthfully give that performance, you know. Like, and it was like, for me, yeah, that was, all this stuff has definitely contributed to what I've been able to do for screen, for sure.
Yeah, so with Les Norton, you spent a lot of time in brothels.
No, but believe it or not, I actually did. I did work.
Oh my God, I didn't expect it to go down here. Let's go there.
I did work in the Cross, and that was the funny thing. It was like you know, when I was younger, and I'd come back just before I went overseas. So I was a host and a bouncer, and, you know, kicked around, you know, different nightclubs, and, you know, it was really, it was right before the lockout laws had kind of come back.
Back when Sydney had some
chutzpah.
chutzpah.
Back when Sydney had something, you know, when we could actually bring people here from overseas, and it wasn't, you know,
embarrassing.
let's not get political, but yeah, you know, it was, it was a different time, and I mean, it was, all of that's quite funny, and, you know, I was able to bring little things into Les that, you know, like even just opening the bollard and shutting the bollard and wishing people a good night, you know what I mean?
Is
like,
stuff that you did
genuinely.
genuinely.
And, like, you know, you could throw that in there, but it was, yeah, I mean, the character Les Norton, obviously, you're taking it back to the 80s, which was even 10 times wilder than, you know, when I was up there, and that was wild as hell. So it's like you're looking at a time when politicians, police, gangsters, you know, illegal casinos, it was all just one big
Smelting pot of corruption,
symbiotic
really.
pot of corruption, yeah. And it was, and it all functioned as this one big unit, and, you know, that was the reality. And, you know, Bob Barrett based all these characters on real people that he knew in his life from around the Cross, and so on and so forth. And so you just had this really interesting, like, for all the unbelievable dialogue that you could never ever use today.
Yeah.
You know, when you read these books or anything, there's also a really earnest thing about him that was he donated 10% of his books to Greenpeace. Like, he was a massive softie, loved animals.
Yeah.
You know, the Indigenous Fund as well. And he basically, everything that he wanted to be and he could personify, he kind of put into Les. And it was this, you know, that was his way of, and there's a famous interview of him that we were watching, you know, and they said, "Oh, so why do you do it?" And he said, "Well, do you know how expensive it is to eat out 3 times a day?" He just liked food. I'm not kidding. That's why Les loves to cook, and it's like, you know, he loved food, and so he kept writing these books, you know, so he could pay for his meals.
Yeah. I mean, because you paid your respects and visited.
Yeah.
Barrett,
It was a I mean, like, where he was. So Lisa, who was his you know, basically his right hand, you know, in everything he did. Lisa Farrell, she you know, he did an amazing thing. She was his carer up until the very end, you know, still at the house, and she hasn't changed much. And what she did, you know, towards the end of the of Bob's time here with us, basically, he gave her rights to the books along with John and a couple of them. And, you know, she went up there and she said just before we started, she put a little Jack on the grave. That was his favourite, you know, a little bottle there. And she came down first day on set, you know, and she was able to come up. And it was, for all, you know, the craziness of this guy, it was, there was some weird emotional correlations, you know, when you were there, because you were thinking, if this guy hadn't written this series, you know, 40 years ago now, none of us would be sitting here doing this thing, you know. And then suddenly, as I said, it was the craziest shoot.
And where is he buried?
He's buried on the Central Coast.
Yeah.
So
looks like quite a picturesque.
Little
location.
church up there. So it's like, it's just on the Central Coast, and it's just a it's almost like, you know, like he's at rest. Like he was an absolute joker. You know, like, from everything I've seen, everything I've read, the guy was just like, he loved to have a laugh, and he didn't, you know, the old thing he used to say is, if you can't laugh at everyone, who can you laugh at?
Yeah.
So that's why, you know, no one was ever safe in his books. No one was ever safe from ridicule. And it was like, you know, everyone copped a bit of flack, but that was how he got away with it. There was no, you know, preconceived judgment on one group or one type. Everyone just copped it.
Yeah. And I mean, speaking of a good laugh, Rebel Wilson looks sensational. Once again, she just gets me, you know? Every time I see her on screen, she tickles my funny bone. What was it like working with Rebel?
Oh, it's definitely keeps you on your toes, to say the least. You know, like you're sitting there and it's like you've been given this script. You got to learn your script. You got to plot your lines, and you know, being the show's Les Norton, I'm in every bloody scene, so you're there for 12, 15 hours a day, and you're sitting there, and then she comes in. And she always just freestyles. There's always this improv quality to her that comes out of it, and
keep you on your toes. I'm guessing, yeah.
I don't. It's just
tell the story. I know there's something there. You're like, is this appropriate? Can I tell this?
Is it appropriate? On. Okay, so there was one line, and it was it definitely got cut out, and it was like, you know, we're sitting there with the videotape, and it was the Karate Kid when I rock up to the door of the brothel in the first episode, you know. And, you know, she just kept every single take. She would say something different. And it took me probably about 8 or 9 takes to just be able to hold a straight face and just realize, like, okay, I can't laugh. And it was like, but that wasn't even the you know, the funniest or the worst with her. It was more like, so Justin Rosniak, who I don't know if you guys are familiar with, who plays Eddie Salita. Now, Justin has a quality on and off set that people can't keep a straight face with. You know, he's just a really absurd funny guy. And so basically he became the hardest person to do scenes with. You know, when there'd be 5 of us together, it'd be David Wenham, who's, you know,
he's a serious
David Wenham,
yeah,
you know? And it's like, course. You know, and you've watched him since you were a kid, and David would come on, then you'd watch David cracking up, trying to do the same with Rosniak around. And I mean, like, there was a couple characters there. Steve Lamarquin, so I meet him. Now, you guys obviously seen Two Hands, you know.
Of course. Going
back with Heath and Gregor, who I worked last year on Gangster, and it was Steve was the bank robber that knocks himself out during the bank robbery, and Gregor cast him as his first role. Now, Steve, the first thing he said to me is, I would trip over smoke. And I was like, oh, yeah, what do you mean? He goes, no, I'm so clumsy, you know, I'd bloody trip over smoke. First take, he walks in, smashes his head into the doorway of the Kelly Club. Second take, because his boots were so loud of the audio, they said, I'll take your boots off. He slips on the mat. Third take, kicks his toe into the table.
Oh, no.
This is the first 3 takes with the guy after he said this to me, and I was like, oh, I get it now.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Insurance.
Okay. Insurance,
you know,
yeah.
would have just been
so when we're shooting there at Bondi, you know, we're on the cliff where our house was, you know, Shane Norton with Kate Box, and we've got the cliff there, and the first thing Jocelyn, I said to each other, we're like, we can't bring Steve.
Keep him away from the edge.
Steve proof.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks fantastic just in its aesthetics.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at it and you go, wow, that does look like it's Bondi in the 80s. But when you consider that this is a location which is so recognizable, what are the challenges in creating an era which is very far from what Bondi looks like right now?
Creating that world was a job that the art department and the costume and then the actors and then the makeup all had to kind of work together with to hit this point. But I mean, when you're doing those outdoor shots and you're down in Bondi and you got to shoot on the Esplanade in the middle of the day, you can imagine how many people have got smartphones out trying to shoot in the background, how many people are running. So to catch the shots that they've got, you know, it's a miracle. Like, we're there in a sunny afternoon walking through Bondi while I'm coming up on the grassy knoll. And there's not one smartphone in the shot.
Yeah.
You can see, you know, we don't know how we did it. It's not like we were asking people to put them away, but, you know, you got it, and then you throw in a couple of extras. But I mean, the real moment for me was we shot outside at Kellett Lane there. That's the exterior of the Kelly Club. But the interior was at Glebe. Now, this is this, you know, seemed like probably $100,000 set they've built. That's the interior of the casino in the basement of the old children's court there. When you walked in, there's David's office, like Price's office up the top, and then this casino floor. And when they packed that full of extras, you know, this world suddenly did exist. Yeah. You know, suddenly you were like, oh my God, okay, so now I see it. So this is where we are. This is where it all kind of happens. You'd leave, you'd go to Bondi. I mean, the art department would just deck it all out amazingly. We shot some amazing stuff over in Kurnell, and every satellite character they had come in gave something that was so unique to the show. And, you know, everyone knew what it was. No one had any preconception about, oh, you know, we're making this fabulous piece of, you know, drama and, you know, It was like no, we all knew that this was hilarious. You know, we all knew that it was a lot of fun and how silly it was. So everybody came in with a great attitude. And, you know, like I got so sick, you know, a couple times throughout the shoot. Like I was there literally every day for 70 days with the 10-day break, you know, 2 days off, and just, you know, one day I was so sick I burst blood vessels in my eyes from that recent man flu that went around, you know. And the best was with Caesar. We were shooting a second unit. David Caesar, who directed, you know, 3 of the episodes, and we had to go off Bondi. That's where you saw all those shots there in the trailer where I'm getting in the water. Yeah, body surfing. But then there's an episode later. It's a famous part of the books where Les, you know, he finds some coke with the lobsters. You know, he goes to get these lobsters to get a free feed because he's an absolute tight ass. That's the joke. Les is the biggest tight ass. So he finds his coke with these lobsters. But to shoot these shots, we needed to get the drone shots. Now you got to be about 2 k's off Bondi to safely get the shot because the boats have to be behind the marker. So to get these drone shots, they suddenly just left me. They neglected to mention that 2 mako sharks have just come up and buzzed the boat right before we get dropped off. I get in the water with Dean Gould, you know, from Dingo Stunts, and he's kind of like, he's kicking his legs up and he's doing these stunts and he's looking around. I'm like, what? You know, and then to get the drone shot, they just had to leave me. So they go, you know, 1.5 k each side, and then I'm just kind of paddling with this bag of dead lobsters, which are just leaking.
just
lobster
burling.
in the middle of the ocean, and it's the middle of winter, and I've already been in the water for 6 hours, and I was so cold, I was on borderline hypothermia again after the first shoot. And then I just remember getting out of the water, and Caesar's like, yeah, see, we didn't tell you about the sharks for a reason. Yeah. I just got out and I was like, right, okay. Yeah. So
they want to ruin your performance.
Yeah.
Les wouldn't have had fear in his face.
Les wouldn't have had fear in his face. No, but I mean, it was nuts, you know. And then but the locations, that's what I mean. You know, everywhere pristine you can imagine in Sydney. You know, iconic. We got to go to, we got to shoot at, and we got to truly just
turn it into the 80s.
To build into the 80s. And it was like every time we were there, we were shooting, you know, mimicking, you know, Gold Coast in places like Manly and other, you know.
Avoiding a Game of Thrones style Starbucks cup.
Oh yes, I'm sure a keen-eyed fan will pick something up somewhere in there. You know, there's got to be something in there because I mean, we shot 10 one-hour episodes of television in 4 months, and you know, if anyone here understands that high-end drama and whatever that actually requires and the hours that requires and the lines you've got to learn and so on. It was madness.
Yeah, it's just a lot of catering as well.
So much catering. The best catering. Oh my God, the best catering.
So, I mean, you had your brush with some mako sharks, which is fun. What is with you in an aquatic life recently? It seems that you were swarmed by a bunch of dolphins as well.
I was. So on, believe it or not, this is actually super bizarre. So I'm a big believer in the universe. You know, people you know want to call it and put a name on it. I just call it like you know, there's an energy force out there that you know we all feel, and it's within us as humans. It's your sixth sense. It's your gut. When's your gut ever wrong? You know what I mean? It's like you always look back on things, and you know, I've got these 2 tattoos that run up my sides. They were gifted to me 10 years apart. They were done by the monks in Thailand when I was a Muay Thai fighter, and you know they're meant for protection. And on Thursday, I had this feeling. It was a full moon. It was coming in, and I was kind of sitting there. And you know, obviously, there's a lot going on at the moment. I'm starting this new project, 2.5 weeks, Les, everything, and you wake up with a bit of anxiety, and you go, okay, I'm just gonna go to the gym. And I went, okay, and something in me was like, go for a walk. So I just walked from my gym, and I walked down to my local beach, which is Balmoral. So it's about 7K walk, and I just walked down there. As I got there, something in me was like, walk out to the middle point on the island, and I just kind of walked out, and then it was this beautiful kind of sun. The wind had just kind of cut off behind the island there, and I just took my shirt off, and I remember I had 1% battery, and I just posted this little story, and then I was just in the sun. Then I was like, you know, I didn't have a towel, but I got to get in the water. So I get in the water. Then as I kind of swim out 10 feet, I remember thinking about sharks, and I was like, oh my God, like there definitely could be sharks Balmoral. Yeah. Then this fin kind of 30 feet in front of me, like went bang, then another fin, and then next thing you know, there's 25 dolphins, like babies, mamas, everything. They're all just swimming, and I just swam towards them and then dove down. They were just bringing their little babies right near me, and they just surrounded me for like 10 minutes. Yeah. And then I just kind of came in, and I was like, okay, whatever that was, you know, it was meant to happen. That was great. this guy comes up and he's like, hey, I just filmed the whole thing from the headland. You know, and I was like, if I had told people, hey, yeah, I just went down to Balmoral, walked down there on the full moon, and then 30 dolphins came and surrounded me. People would have been like, oh, yeah, like 20 feet away. And you see in the video, it's like they're like just popping up all around me and they just surround me on my Instagram. This guy just sent it to me and I was just like, yeah, I mean, moments like that, you know. And then I actually almost did get killed by an elephant when I was in Thailand when I was younger.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was went over there to fight and we went to go see them at night and this huge one, you know, we were all playing with the mums and the babies at this camp that has been shut down now. And we're only 19. We didn't realise, you know, that how bloody dangerous or how cruel it was what they actually did to these elephants. And the big one was there and it just, I remember thinking I was Crocodile Dundee and I was like hugging its head. Like I thought I was totally in the zone with this thing. And then
Basic Australian mentality,
oh,
you know?
totally,
we just
totally,
think that we
totally.
can
We
do
just
whatever
think
we like with
we just
animals.
think we're with them. And then I just flat on my back. And I remember like hearing it slam, and it's almost like it's trying to stomp me, like it's headbutted me. Put a Harry Potter lightning bolt crack in my sternum.
Woof.
Trying to headbutt me, and I didn't remember screaming. It was 4 of my mates with me at the time were there. And as I rolled, it caught just the side of me here, and I had like a football-sized sack of fluid, crack in my sternum, like stitches in my head, knee, foot. So that was actually within the first 2 weeks of being in Thailand for this. We were only going to go for 2 months. Now, that put me in my room for like a month and a half to fight infection, you know, to do all this, obviously, like in and out of hospital, and they're changing gauze. So that kind of gave me the drive when everyone was leaving that I just wanted to train. So I ended up staying for almost a year, and I fought for the light heavyweight belt. And that was when I was a kid. But yeah, I'm a massive softie, and animals are like my yeah.
So what you're saying really is that you should avoid the big ones.
Yeah. No,
but
it's more like I mean, you know, what I've learned from animals is there's nothing more pure. Like, you know, like a dog's judge of character is so pure. You know what I mean? Like there's nothing more pure than a dog. A dog, when it barks at someone, there's something off, or someone says they don't like, you know, they're not too in with dogs, and maybe they've had a bad experience. Maybe that's all it was. But I mean, there's something more there, and you know, like we as humans, we don't give animals the respect I think they deserve. You know, I think they're far more astute and far more intelligent than you can ever imagine.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's yeah.
Now we do have a few Q&As coming in from people watching.
Okie dokie.
So, what is your dream role? Someone has asked.
Dream role.
Sounds like Aquaman. Maybe could be a good idea.
Well, I'm a Pisces, so there you go. No, it's definitely not Aquaman, but it would be. I said this the other day. It would be something like, you know, looking back on like the real big epics like Braveheart, or you know, something like Gladiator, something where it's, you know, you're dealing with, you know, almost 1,000 extras on set, and you know, it's a huge, you know, it's built in. You're shooting for every year.
You just want to fight, don't you? You want to get in there, and you want to.
Well, it's I mean, it's a lot of fun doing the physical stuff as well. And when you can put in, you know, an amazing script and something like that, it's just it's going somewhere. You know, with as a character, you want to have an arc. You know, without getting into the whole, you know, the wanky side of acting or whatever you want to call it. You know, it's just you always want to have an arc, which is somewhere where you can go from somewhere to somewhere. And you know, some of those epics would be amazing to be a part of for sure.
Someone else has asked, how do you feel about being called the next Chris Hemsworth? I would have said the next Luke Bracey.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a throw around. It's a name. You know, anything can happen from now until then. I'm just super happy to be here and you know, doing what I love for a living. It's great.
So that's funny that, you know, you and Luke Bracey share the same birthday.
Yeah, so we're both born February 1990, and
just in case you want to get him a birthday present.
Yeah, just in case we won't give you the pinpoint, but it was but yeah, we grew up in the same hood, you know, and obviously same friends, and you know, you link and you come apart, and then you relink, and then he surprised me at the Les Norton premiere with Travi, who you guys had on here. They both came up, you know, and yeah, hopefully we can get them on to season 2.
Yeah, nice.
Something funny, so
rock and roll.
Yeah.
More questions coming in with the Q&A. What's the most debaucherous thing you've witnessed while working in the Cross?
I was about to say I definitely can't say the most debaucherous things that I've seen. I mean, you can't.
Can you PG it? Can you?
Oh, you can't even PG half the stuff that I've seen up there. But I mean, I've seen some crazy stuff working up there for sure.
Who is one actor or actress you'd really love to work with?
Actor or actress?
I mean, not that David Wennerman rebel.
No, I mean,
anything to turn your nose up to.
yeah,
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's there's someone I could work with, just because when you talk about an arc as a human being, I mean, Downey Jr.
Yeah.
I feel like he's had such an incredible life into where he's at now, and obviously him finishing. I mean, yeah, that'd be a bucket list thing to tick off. Or De Niro, you know, I work with someone like that.
Well, I mean, it's interesting when you were talking about how almost your failures with your injuries resulted in you going into acting.
Yeah.
And when you listen to Robert Downey Jr. talking about how he'd hit rock bottom and he was eating a really bad hamburger and it was so terrible that it inspired for him to get his career back in order. And it's like turning kind of adversity into something positive.
Yeah, totally. I mean,
very similar.
even in this grind now, you know, I remember it would have been like 2017, like, you know, money had all been spent up, hadn't had a role for, 6-7 months, gone through some personal stuff. And I remember coming out the back end of it, and I didn't have a place in Sydney. I didn't even have money for a bond from my military pension. You know, I was basically going to give up on acting. And then a girlfriend of mine, she said, "Oh, can you move into my place in Sydney for 2 weeks while I'm in LA just to pay this rent?" And I said, "Look, I can." So I got up there, and then she said, "I've got to go for 3 months." So I've moved in there randomly, and then as I move into the place, it's like I get this little audition. It was for this Netflix series they did here in Australia, and it was, it was just the little kickback into what I had. And then I actually got a job at Woolworths stacking shelves for the first time in 10 years.
Wow.
And, I swallowed my pride and I said, I'll do whatever it takes from this moment on. And about 4 or 5 weeks later, I landed this Mitsubishi commercial. And then, that led into, obviously, that was just enough money to hold me over, like literally just enough. Like it wasn't much. It was like $4,000 or something. And I remember I was sitting there and I was like, okay, that's the first thing. And then whatever happens. And then I auditioned for this series, Play for Keeps, get offered the role, the lead in this series. And the same day, I got this call back for this series that I tested for, a couple of weeks before, and it was called Australian Gangster. And I had to sign the NDA, and then they said, "Look, Play for Keeps is guaranteed 2 seasons. The money's there. This will be happening in Melbourne and blah, blah, blah." And I heard that Australian Gangster, the director was Gregor Jordan. And I was like, "I'll do that for $100 a week."
Yeah.
Just to work with Gregor. And, no one could understand why or how. And it was kind of like when you've come from that rock bottom place and when you've been there, you don't really care about, the schematics or the other side of it. You're like, I'd prefer not to work for 3 years and do something like that than not. And so anyway, they gave me 24 hours to make the decision, thank God, from Play for Keeps. But this was on Anzac Day Eve. Now I'm a soldier, so Anzac Day is usually, a big day for you and you get up early. But they gave me 20 pages, 5 scenes to learn for Australian Gangster with an 8 a.m. callback on the Thursday morning with both producers in the room and the casting director. I had to cry in 2 of these scenes. And I just remember like going, okay, I'm going to do this. Like it was just this weird feeling of like, I'm going to do this. And I went in there and I did it, and they still called me back that afternoon. I was trying to take my mind off. We went to watch Avengers or something, at the time, the first Avengers, and we're sitting in there, and then I get the call and they're like, "Look, they've gone the other way with a name. They're still going with this name." And I was like, and then 20 minutes later I get a call. They're like, "Actually, you've got the wrong."
Oh, jeez.
And I was like, "Oh my God," like I was about to have a heart attack. And I walked out there, and I didn't realize at the time, Gregor in LA, from the heads of the network that all made this decision, Gregor actually wrote an email, which he said he'll give to me one day if I ever want it. Now, he took a complete shot on someone, who he had no idea who he was or whatever behind me, just off this performance. And he changed my life, Like it was crazy. And it was just, then you get offered that. And then 2 days later, he flies back from LA. They get me in with Moody Danawi, the diet doctor. Now I'm looking, a little bit portly. I've got my long curly hair out to here. I've done this whole thing. And he had no idea I wasn't Italian because, it was Western Sydney. So you had to have the full accent, talk like that, and do the whole thing. So it's this, it was this full-on character, and obviously 4 hours of makeup a day, tats, but I had to look like this guy as well. So, I only had 4.5 weeks to do it. And so Moody's got me on 8 meals a day doing this bodybuilding. And Gregor, him and I just spent 4 weeks breaking apart this script and changing certain parts of dialogue that were realistic than weren't, and it was just, it was an amazing time. And then we go into that, and I was in every page except for 6, in 4 hours of filmmaking with 4 hours on top of makeup a day. So it was crazy, and I got shot dead as this guy on Friday the 13th on a new moon. Final day of shooting, final scene, and it was like 20 years to the day. He said that since they started Two Hands.
Wow.
So it was just this super emotional, crazy correlation. So many things happen on that set.
Because I mean, even when we look at the Les Norton stuff, it does have a very Two Hands flavor.
Well, he actually messaged me. I hadn't spoken to Gregor for a little while, and he messaged me and he said, it looks like Two Hands. We're all saying it looks like Two Hands. So it's it's a weird thing to look back on, especially that part in Sydney. But I mean, there's nothing more grateful than I am to be here doing this and doing this job. Like I said, there was days when I would have killed for 12 to 15 hour days to 70 days and 20 outfit changes, and 20 pages of dialogue. So you just got to be grateful for every day you got on set. So if you see people kind of dropping the ball or not pulling their weight, or they're complaining about a little migraine, they don't want to do this, you're like, I just had hypothermia, I just got through this. Bloody legs.
I nearly got eaten by a shark.
Yeah, come on, we can do this. We can do this.
Yeah.
We can do this. Let's just do it. And I mean, it really helped having people like Wenham, because that guy he's every bit you'd think he is. He's a
pro.
He's a pro. And it's like 215, 20 lines given in a day, 16 minutes of footage, and the guy just does it.
Yeah.
And doesn't drop a beat.
I mean, it is interesting, though, because not too long ago we had Brian Brown in here talking about Two Hands, and he was reminiscing about Heath Ledger, and he was singing his praises. And even just from the trailer, there are these moments where it feels like we're looking at Heath again. Have you had these moments where there's been comparisons of Heath ever come up in conversation? Talking about this role?
People keep they keep mentioning it to me, but it's like I don't see it. It's just it's like, imagine if someone said the same thing to you. You're not. Like, how do you don't take that in the same, you know what I mean? Like, it's not like
a lot to digest.
Yeah, totally. And it's not something that, you like, in the end of the day, you just, I want to stay me. I want to stay humble through this whole thing. I don't want to ever forget what it's like to not have this, or be that guy, who's yelling at the assistant for the coffee or
You'll never forget stacking Woolies
mate, I'll never
shelves.
forget that. 3,000 boxes in a day, first day record. So I'll never forget that.
Is that a record?
Record for the Woolies out there. They were saying, but it was just can't imagine how many calories you were burning and just stacking and just.
I like that. That's how you look into it. It's like, if I'm gonna do a really bad a job that no one wants to do, I'm gonna be the best at it.
But no, I was just like work hard, and it was just that thing of like, I just. It was humbling, it truly was, and it was nice to do that. It doesn't take anything away from doing that job, if that's your career or anything. It's just, I wanted to do something else and take a different path, and that was for me the opposite of where I wanted to be, and to do that and then be here now doing what I'm doing, it does spin you out. Yeah.
And I mean, before I do let you go, it seems like this spirituality is a big part of you. And that you do seem quite in touch with the energies of the world. When did this start? When did this become something that you started to focus on and really harness, if you will?
Thailand, really. My first trip there at 19. There was a couple of us who went over there, and we unfortunately we lost a couple of our mates when we were younger, and as we grew up, we were really unlucky. And one of the guys who came over there is one of our best friends, and. When you're dealing with 2,000-year-old energies, I mean, we've been here 200 years. Mark Cole Smith, one of my best friends. He's Aboriginal actor from Melbourne. He's an amazing guy. Of
course.
And he's very in touch, obviously, with this community and everything there. And I mean, we've been here as a nation for 200 and something years. They were here 40,000. And then it's the Native Americans too. So. When I would look at certain things and the ties, it would be that thing of like, oh, they'd burn the sage, to clear it, or they burn the bark, or they've got ways to hunt fish here. I mean, there's so many amazing things that we kind of overlooked, thinking that our society knew what they were talking about. So I mean, I just started to explore and see things for myself rather than read things. If you see something or if something feels right, it's like, oh, that actually worked. that was real to me. So I just started to go with my gut rather than my head.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And Alex, what next? Where will we be seeing you on our screens?
In 2.5 weeks, I start on a show called Fallout, which Peter Duncan has written and directed, and it's actually a really interesting, really heavy and dark piece of our history about the nuclear testing at Maralinga. Now it's done in a really comedic and kind of dark light, which is very Catch-22 mashy. And it's a really big epic, and it's an ensemble cast, and shooting really at South Australia and Maralinga as well. We'll be down there for a bit, and we're shooting out here in Sydney as well for the next month and a half, and that's where I'll be.
Fantastic. Well, until then, please stay out of the water if there is a full moon. But thank you so much for joining us here on Build. A round of applause.
My pleasure.
For Alexander Bertrand. This has been Build Series Sydney.